Welcome to the power of our story. We are a place of safety for our protectors to process the journey together with others that get it. We are building a tribe in the gap where we are losing our protectors to hopelessness and suicide. We do this by storytelling, as our stories connect us. You can reach out to us at the power of our story and meet our amazing community that cares about you and understands. Please don't spend years suffering in silence. I am honored to introduce an incredible woman this evening. Reverend Kim Osorio was my training officer when I became a US-NYS State Chaplain. And I was trying today to think of something that stood out to me from our training. And there's one thing that she said to me that I think really embodies what the chaplaincy is all about. And she said, wake up, wash up, pray up, and show up. And I really, that has stuck with me. And I really think that is such a central tenet to what being a chaplain is all about. Reverend Kim Osorio has had a deep commitment to God and service for over 25 years. She states, my purpose in life is to serve God by lovingly serving others. In 1998, Reverend Osorio was licensed as a Baptist minister, and in 2015, she was ordained as a non-denominational minister. Her official journey, working in the field of interfaith spiritual care, began during 9/11, when she had the honor of serving as a chaplain supervisor for the American Red Cross. Currently, she serves as the vice president of operations, as well as an instructor for the New York US Chaplain Task Force. She takes enormous pride in equipping people all over the world to become servant leaders. She has also been an on-call trauma chaplain for the MTA New York Transit Authority for the past 11 years. In 2016, she became the first recipient of the MTA's Diane S. Armstrong Humanitarian Award. She is extremely passionate about serving others and often quotes, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted and behold, service was joy. Locally, she is part of the ministerial staff at Solid Rock Christian Center located in Yonkers, New York. Reverend Osorio also believes in studying to show herself approved, and she has attained her degree and numerous master level certifications. However, she understands that all the knowledge in the world without application is fruitless. She believes that truly being a living example takes more than just knowing and saying something. It takes putting your boots to the ground and doing something. So, with each awakening day, her desire is to do her best to demonstrate the love of God through her actions. Thank you for being here, Reverend Kim. It's an honor to have you here. And now, please tell us your story.
Good evening, everyone. My God. I am so honored to be here tonight, to have the opportunity to share my story with all of you. When Chaplain Todd asked me to be here, I said, share my story. I was somewhat taken back and thinking that I didn't have, what could I say? Thinking that I really didn't have much to say to all of you. Well, I'm so grateful. I can't thank each of you enough for the service that all of you give. I am amongst a group of first responders, and some of the members of my team that I invited here tonight, I invited because of the work that they do, because they are a nurse, or because they are law enforcement, or because they are a veteran. So I strategically chose those who I invited here tonight. And I am so grateful for those who said yes and who decided to join me. Todd, I can't thank you enough. Thank you for giving me this esteemed honor. Who am I? I am a wife, which you just met, my very loving husband, Reynard. I am a mother. I am a glamour. I am a sister of brothers. I had a brother who was in the Navy, a brother who was in the Air Force, a brother who was in the Marines. But most of all, I am a friend. But most of all, I like to believe and think that I am a loving servant leader. Growing up, I was a nurturer. It seemed to come naturally. I was that kid who would get together with her best friend, and we would take younger kids who were around the block who we felt were lacking love and care and nurturing. And we would save up our allowance and we would go out and go shopping and buy dresses for them. And then we would take them and we would take them we would bathe them and do their hair and put them on these pretty outfits, because we felt that all little girls should look and feel pretty. I just generally loved and cared for others. It just seemed to come naturally. So it didn't surprise me when I ended up becoming employed for the New York City Board of Education. I was an early childhood educator. So God had blessed me with the opportunity to lovingly instill not just wisdom and knowledge, but love on children who often came from broken homes. But that wasn't enough for me. In addition to that, I was truly blessed with the opportunity to be being trained unofficially in the area of medicine by my pediatrician. So in the daytime, I worked in the Bronx, New York for a early childhood, a public school. And then in the afternoon, I would drive out to Flushing, Queens, where I was learning. I was doing stuff that the doctor probably would have gotten in trouble for allowing me to do. But he was training me because he knew I just had a heart to care for people. And I was thinking about going into becoming a physician assistant. I was very active. I was somewhat of a tomboy. I played tennis. I did a little bit of gymnastics, and I used to box. I used to go to the gym, Fort Apache gym, and I used to box with some of the guys, and I was just living what I thought was my best life. And then April 15th, 1991, that dreadful day in which my world came crashing down. Literally, I came crashing down. In the school where I was teaching, I slipped on the stairs, and it was a cast iron staircase, and I went airborne, and I came down on my back at the end of the stairs, and at the bottom step. And the impact of my falling was so hard that the security guard flew up the stairs to find me laying down on the ledge. He said it sounded like a bomb went off. And it wasn't that I was so big, because I wasn't. At that point, at that time in my life, I probably never weighed over 125, 130 pounds. But the impact was so powerful. So he found me laying on the stairs, and that was the day, in my opinion, that the Kim I knew died. I never went back to work from that day. Between 1991 and 2005, I had 6 major surgeries on my spine. I was in and out of the hospital so much. At one point, the hospital was more of my home than my own home was. In addition to the 6 major surgeries, I can't even tell you how many minor procedures I had, where I had to have my spinal cord had to be burned, the nerve endings had to be burned. I had to have injections, nerve block injections. And I walked around at one point, I had a morphine pump attached to my hip. The most tragic part for me was the fact that the doctors who took an oath to care for me, because they couldn't help me, or they couldn't, quote, fix me, they began to try to tell me that it was all in my head. They would tell me things like, you can't possibly be in this amount of pain. And I clearly remember one day my mom has me, my mom was she was my greatest supporter. She was my greatest supporter until the day she transitioned. And she had me, I was in a wheelchair and I was in the office one day and the doctors were saying, she can't possibly be in this much pain. And my mom lost it. She said, look at her. This is not my child. And they still didn't get it because they couldn't find out what was going on. So what ended up happening is they began to neglect me. These people, these doctors who had taken an oath to care for me began to neglect me. I would go to the hospital. I thank God, because God, some of you can probably attest to this. God always has an angel, someone looking out for us. And that's who my rehab doctor was. She was my angel, because from day one, she believed me. She knew that something was going on that was beneath the surface that they could not see. So here I am going back and forth in the hospital, back and forth at the hospital. I'm angry at this point. I'm angry at God. Why? How could you allow this to happen? I believe in you. I serve you. I was saved under the Christian faith. You know, we believe in salvation. So I was saved. I gave my life to God at a very young age, at 12 years old, at a campfire. So I didn't understand why this was happening to me. But nevertheless, there was something in me that I knew I had to fight. So I had a fight within me that I know I had to just keep pushing and keep pushing against all odds. I had to keep pushing. I would go to the hospital, be admitted. And there was one time when I was admitted into the hospital.
I can no longer hear you.
My rehab doctor admitted me. Can y'all hear me?
I hear you fine.
Okay. My rehab doctor admitted me, and she requested a pain management consult. Now I'm in the hospital, and I'm in the hospital for several days. Now I'm in the hospital for over a week, and pain management is not coming to see me. Now, one thing that I could say, God always had his hand on me, but I couldn't see it. I was blinded. I was blinded by my pain. I was blinded by what I felt. God abandoned me, and my mindset. God had abandoned me, so I was blinded by it. And I'm in the hospital one day, and same week, she comes in and she goes, "Oh, I see they finally came to see you." And me and my roommate looked at each other and said, "Who?" She said, "Pain management. They finally came and did a consult." "When?" So she goes, "They wrote in your chart." "You mean to tell me that they wrote in your chart, but they actually didn't come up?" And I didn't have to say anything. My roommate says, "If they wrote in her chart, then that's what happened, because we've been in this room all day and no one has come in here." So now that's not just neglect. They're breaking the law because they're falsifying records. And meanwhile, I'm not getting any better. I'm in excruciating pain. They're not understanding, how is this woman still awake when she's wearing a fentanyl patch. She has a morphine IV, and we're giving her hydromorphone pills on top of that, along with muscle relaxers and Benadryl, because I was itching from all the medication, but yet I'm still awake because the pain was just that severe. So what ended up happening is I ended up having to call the state. I reported them to the state. And another time when I'm hospitalized, and mind you, like I said, it hurt me because these are the people who are supposed to be helping me get better. But number one, they're not believing me. And number two, they're neglecting me. They had me come and sit. They wanted me to come and sit on a round table with some psychiatrists so they could evaluate me. And I said I wasn't going to go. And when the head doctor asked me why didn't I want to come? And I said, why should I come when they've already made up their mind? They've already judged me. So why do I have to prove myself to someone? And then he asked me, why you say that? And I told him, because some of them were very disrespectful. Some of them would come straight out and tell me they don't believe me. I just want medicine. They would say all kinds of things to me that were out of line. So when I said that, he said, now I want you to come. Because basically what he was saying is, he said, I want you to face your accusers. And when I came, I spoke up. And they couldn't say anything because they knew they were caught. Nevertheless, I continued to struggle. I'm back in the hospital again. But at this time, I had put in a report. I had reported to the state. Sure enough, God's timing is always perfect. I'm in the hospital and the state walks in. So they walk in with the head of the nurses and the head of the doctors, and you could hear a pin drop. They want to know who called them. And one of the nurses who believed me, she said, Miss Osorio called them. She said, I told you you had the wrong one. And they did a full-blown investigation, and they found out that everything that I was saying was true. Because one thing that my pops, I had my daddy who passed away when I was young, but I had a bonus dad that I call my pops. And one thing that my pops taught me is you keep a written record, because if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. So I had a timeline of everything that had happened. And when they found that I was telling the truth, the people who were mistreating me, they got permanent records written in their files. And my rehab doctor says, now I have to transfer you because your life is in danger. She said, you threaten their livelihood. She said, anybody can come in here and put anything in your IV. Sure, your mom, who I know loves you, she'll fight for the end. She'll be rich, but you'll be gone. And her transferring me probably saved my life. It definitely saved me from being paralyzed. Because when I got to the next hospital, where it's actually the hospital where I had the surgeries at, the first one, they didn't do anything. All they kept doing is giving me water therapy, giving me physical therapy, giving me occupational therapy. It was all surface. They weren't getting below the surface to see what was going on. But when I got to the other hospital and they had me see a neurosurgeon, he watched me. And he said, look at this woman. She's not an actress. Something is going on that we can't see. So we're going to have to go inside and do, we're going to do a laminectomy, and we're going to do like exploratory surgery. This wasn't until my accident was in 1991. This first surgery didn't take place until 1995. And what they found when they went inside blew their minds. And to this day, I still can't wrap my mind around how it happened. But what they found was the impact of my fall was so powerful that it dislodged one of my discs. And inside of my body, the disc lassoed around my spinal column somehow and was choking me. The doctor said a few months later, I would have been paralyzed. So I ended up with a form of paralysis. I believe I have a lot of believers here. So Psalms 30, I'm gonna give you one of my scriptures. It says, Psalms 34:19 says, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers them out of it all. So I continued on with my treatment. I continued. I had a home attendant. So it was very humbling, but there was a lot of shame. I had a lot of shame. I had a lot of guilt. I had a lot of embarrassment. I had to have people, wash me. I couldn't wash myself. I couldn't cook for myself. I couldn't clean for myself. But in the process of all this, somehow deep within, even though I was angry, I held on to a little bit of my faith. I believe I was holding on to the very thread of God. And I just kept fighting. I went in, I now know that I ended up, that experience left me with PTSD, right? I had moments of depression where I never forget. I have bonus brothers too. One of my brothers, John, one time I refused to get out of the bed and wash myself. And I'm keeping it real tonight. I was smelling myself, but I still refused to get out of the bed. Until he told me, and he had keys to my apartment. He said, if I'm gonna come over there and I'm gonna drag you in the shower myself. And that made me get up and take a shower, because I knew that he was crazy enough to try to do it. And I could see myself knocking my brother out, and I didn't want to do that. So it was a long struggle. I lost a lot. But in the process of losing, I also gained a lot. I had to rediscover who I was. I had to rediscover what I was made to do. I had to do, according to Alvin Toffler, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, he said, the illiterate of the future are not those who can't read or write, but those who cannot learn, relearn, and unlearn. So you heard Chaplain Todd say that I believe in studying to show myself approved. So that's what I began to do. I began to study. Because one thing that I understood, I had a big sister in ministry who said, she referred to me as a type of Job with my patience. So when I would be hospitalized, I wasn't sitting in the hospital bed. Even in all my pain, I wasn't sitting in the hospital bed just moping. I would get up, I would go around the hospital and serve the other patients. As a matter of fact, let me share a story with you. There was one patient. This woman had a double mastectomy, and she had recovered from that double mastectomy. And on her final visit to the doctor, she was waiting on her way home. She was waiting in the garage for them to bring her car out. And a car came barreling in the garage, a truck And the woman who was driving didn't realize the truck was too high. So it knocked the roof of the garage, and my roommate, when she went to jump out of the way, the roof came down and chopped off the back of her foot. And this is my roommate. Now, we had been roommates for a couple of weeks because there were times when I was in the hospital for more than a month at a time. So we're in here and roommates, and her, so much we got so close, her son would come in the hospital and he would sit on my bed, and people would come in and be confused. They're like, wait a minute, isn't that your son? Well, one night she's crying and I hear her crying, and I get out of the bed because I just can't see someone hurting and at least not try to help them. So I get out of the bed and I go next to her and I pull a chair up, and I put my hand on her head, and she looks up at me and she says, "Who are you?" Now I'm wondering, I'm like, it's me, your roommate. We've been roommates now for more than 2 weeks. And she goes, "No, you're glowing." And then she says, "Why are you doing this? I hear what they say about you. You're in worse condition than I am. According to the doctors, there's no hope for you. I'll recover." And my comment to her was, I can't just leave you laying in this bed crying and hear you suffering and at least not try to help you. So that's what I began to do, right? I had to unlearn some thoughts that were in my head. I had to unlearn some of the negative things that were the doctors would say about that I wouldn't amount to anything, that I was going to be needing assistance either in the walker or the wheelchair for the rest of my life. I had to unlearn that I wasn't good enough. And I had to relearn some things, some false teachings I had to relearn. And then I took it upon myself to learn. I took it upon myself to get as much training as I could to help those who are very near and dear to my heart. Now, I care for all human beings, but those who serve, I have a deep passion for. So I went, let me back up a little bit. So when 9/11 happened, I was an associate minister at the church. I heard in my spirit God saying, "Go, make your way down there. Your help is needed." So I did. I made my way, and I ended up being brought on as a chaplain with the Red Cross and the chaplain supervisor. And that's when I found out how very important the role of a chaplain is. I was given an escort down to ground zero by a high-ranking officer in the NYPD, and we got, mind you, I was the chaplain who welcomed the National Guard when they arrived in town. And I'm in the armory, and one of the lieutenants, or I don't remember what his title was, but he was having an argument with one of the soldiers who was lower than him, and I was shaking in my boots because I'm here by myself and I'm supposed to be providing support for them. But I had my training as a minister, but I had no chaplain training. So it was after 9/11 that I decided I need to get some training in this area, because this role, being a chaplain, it supersedes, for me, this is my opinion, it supersedes all other titles, because as a chaplain, it's not about religion. It's about relationship. It's about building up a relationship of mutual trust and respect so that you can help those who are in need. So I became a chaplain with New York State Chaplain Task Force. At the time, we were just New York State Chaplain Task Force under the leadership of Reverend Dr. Marcos Miranda, who was following a vision that was his mom's vision. And I learned the tools. I learned how very important it is to listen more than speak. Now tonight, if I wasn't the featured presenter, that's exactly what I would be doing. You probably wouldn't hear much from me at all because I would be listening and I would be observing, I would be watching the room to see who was in need. So I became a chaplain with New York State Chaplain Task Force, and then I became a chaplain instructor. Then I became a supervisor, and now I am so honored to be the VP of Operations and an instructor who trains men and women of all faiths all over the world. I trained Israelites. I trained Muslims. I trained people of the Jewish faiths. I trained Christians of all, Protestants of all different denominations. I've trained Hindus, I've trained Buddhists. And we all to come together because we don't see through the eyes of religion. We see through the eyes of love. So I continue to learn. I went through the NYPD Citizens Academy because there were some things I had to unlearn. All the negative things that we see on the news about law enforcement, which makes you think that every single law enforcement is bad, and that couldn't be furthest from the truth. So I learned, I went through the academy so I can see through the eyes of the law enforcement. Because going through the Citizens Academy, you study from the same books that they study from. You learn about their laws, you learn about their policies and procedures. Because I wanted to be able to be the liaison, be the gap, be the bridge, be the bridge that joins, that unites the community and the law enforcement. I took trainings in the assist training, which is applied suicide intervention skills trainings. And I went through the training with 22-0, and I'm so grateful for Dan Jarvis for affording me that opportunity, because it hurt my heart when I learned that 22 veterans take their life every day. And for God to give him the vision to bring that number from 22 down to 0, I said, I have to be on board. I have to be on board. I did training in grief. I did grief counseling training. I just recently I graduated from the FBI Academy, the FBI Citizens Academy, because not only do I want to help people on the local level, I want to be able to help agents and their families and the ones that are not in uniform nationally. I want to be able to understand how they think. I want them to know, just like I want all of you to know, there are people who genuinely care about you. We see you, we feel you, and we hear you. And if you allow us to come into your space, we will journey alongside of you and be the wind beneath your wings. Because I can only imagine what some of you have seen, what some of you have gone through. But when you see me, you see a miracle. You see the face of hope. God did something else. The hospital where I had my surgeries at, God took me back there as a chaplain. I did 2 clinical pastoral education units at the same hospital. And it just so happened when I was walking doing my rounds one day, I'm walking down the hall and one of my nurses was still working there. She dropped her entire tray because she had never seen me walk without assistance. Every time she seen me, I was either in a wheelchair with my walker, and I was high. Let me keep it real, I was high. It was only the grace of God that I didn't become addicted, because I was on all kinds of narcotics, but God kept me. And all of this, even being angry, he kept me. Until one day, I had the epiphany. I came to the realization that it was never about me. This was my training ground. Everything that I went through was giving me what I needed so that I could be able to journey alongside people who were going through different issues. How could I relate to someone who was going through withdrawal if I didn't go through withdrawal? I went through withdrawal. I went through different stages of withdrawal. How could I relate to someone who had to struggle to fight to keep their home if I didn't have to struggle to fight to keep my home? I signed myself out against medical advice because the marshal was coming to evict me from my home. So everything I went through was to prepare me. So I was a type of Joseph, because Genesis 50:20 says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, for the saving of many lives, as he is doing today. So it gives me great honor to be here with all of you tonight to share my story, because God has turned my ashes into beauty, and he is allowing me to go around and to give people hope, to help them recover what may have been lost, to help them recover pieces of their soul that was lost because of the traumatic, a traumatic incident that they may have gone through, something they have seen, something their family has experienced. And now God allows me to use what I went through to help all of them. The school of life. The school of life is what enables us to learn, to unlearn, and to relearn. The school of life is what enables us to take the valuable lessons that we've learned and help somebody else. So that's my passion. Every day I get up, I thank God for his new mercies. I thank God for another opportunity to go out and to lovingly serve. I thank God that he is teaching me. I haven't arrived. He's still teaching me how to use what he's given me to be a blessing to others. And all of you, you are going through your school of life too, right? And the curriculum and the syllabus is only for you. It's yours. God has created a curriculum and a syllabus for each and every one of you. So I want to encourage you. Whatever you have gone through in life, people may throw dirt on you on life. Those who are closest to you may turn your back on you. Don't allow those things, whatever you have gone through, Don't allow it to destroy you, but allow it to be your building blocks so that you can build and so that you can continue to become the blessing that God has destined for each and every one of you to be. God bless you. Thank you so much for listening to my story.
Thank you, Reverend. That was amazing. That truly touched my heart. I know from a personal perspective, through my affliction, I had forgotten that I had thought that God had forgotten me, and when I came out of that dark place, I realized that he had not forgotten me at all, that he was equipping me. And your story just proves that once again. So, as I suspected, we're running over our normal time, and that's fine. This is when we open it up to questions. So if you want to use your little reactions button to raise your hand to ask a question, feel free. Michelle.
Okay, so first of all, I just want to thank you so much for coming on, Reverend Kim. That was a very powerful story. Just to hear, if there was someone that I had to just put the epitome of hope in, like you are that representation to me now. And so I truly appreciate you being vulnerable with us tonight and sharing your journey. As someone who did quite some time as a first responder in the 911 field, I can tell you how much I truly appreciate that you've taken the time to immerse yourself into the Citizens Academy to learn what we all have to learn, because it's not just the policies and everything you're learning the culture, and it's hard to understand until you learn it. And so I really appreciate that, because when we need help, when I struggled, when I first was undiagnosed with PTSD, but I had the symptoms, we don't know who to turn to. We don't trust people. In our own family, mental health support is still such a taboo in the first responder world that you're looked at as the black sheep, or you just don't talk about it with any of them. So I truly, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate what you're doing for the first responder culture. I think that it's amazing. And I love that you talked about finding the new you. It's almost like you took all your broken pieces and put them back together to make a new picture. And this is what you found. And that gives me hope, because I'm right in that middle, that transition out of my 14 years as a 911 dispatcher. And now I'm back in the world trying to figure out what do I do? And so hearing people like you and your story and how you've been able to pick it up and build something even better that you probably never would have even imagined God had in store for you, I think that gives hope to people like me. So thank you for that.
Michelle, just stay focused, right? Find out what you're passionate about. First of all, thank you, because I know 911 dispatchers, right? Sometimes they are the forgotten ones.
Yeah.
Because they're not the ones who are going out. They're not the ones responding. But all the things that you hear, and that, it's like, it's kind of impossible. Some people think that you can hear these horrific stories and not be impacted by it.
No.
So I just want to thank you for your service. And I just want to encourage you to find out what you're passionate about, and just go for it. Surround yourself with people who believe in you, who support you, and everyone else. Don't and not in a disrespectful way, but everyone else, the naysayers, don't give them the time of day. And that could be your family members, but you just stay focused and know this is something, as when you feel deep down in your gut that this is something that I need to do, go for it. You can call me up. I'll encourage you. I'll pray with you if you need. Todd, can I throw my number in the chat? I'll throw my number in the chat, but no, if you have a supporter here.
Thank
Okay?
you. That means the world to me. I appreciate that.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. Anybody else? Raise your hand. All right. I tell you what, Reverend Kim, you know, in listening to you and going through the training, you know, you get a sense of the passion you have to serve and the overwhelming need to give glory to God in everything you do. But to hear the story of your journey to get there was incredible. And I thank you very much for that. And I want to thank everybody else for joining us tonight. And before we close, I'd like to, we have an overwhelming number of chaplains on tonight. So I'm going to, before we close, I'm going to pray for chaplains everywhere and for the blessings that they give freely. So if you'd all pray with me. Beloved Creator, we lift up to you tonight all those serving you and the family of humanity as chaplains. We pray that you bless our ministry of presence wherever we are serving. Place us wherever there is need, wherever people are in crisis, be it fire, flood, storm, or war. Place us wherever there is disaster, natural or man-caused. Strengthen us to bring images of order in the midst of chaos, comfort to those afflicted, and healing to those in pain. Keep us ever mindful of our code to minister to our own, to facilitate the worship of others, and to care for all. Quiet our thoughts when disorder reigns, so that we may listen, observe, and discern the needs of those we minister to. Make us graceful and accepting, giving comfort to all regardless of their faith. Extend your protecting hand, O God, when we must serve in times of danger. Keep us ever aware of the need to care for ourselves so that we do not grow weary in caring for those in need. O God, we live to serve others. In serving others, we give glory to you and joy into our own lives. Into your hands, O God, we commend all for whom we pray, trusting always in your mercy and grace. Amen. Thank you all for joining us.
Amen.
Michelle, you want to end recording?